Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr Christine Cornet, head of the book office at the French Institute in India. And by my exact position, title is Attaché for Books, Debates and Ideas. This is a program. Today, it's an honor to welcome 3 female producers. And the Embassy of France in India is really pleased to celebrate and bring together these 3 women in the movie business who have not only carved a niche for themselves, but are working to show over the way through their cinema, but also through their engagement off camera. Before introducing our woman guest, I would like to remind you of a few elements. The number of women working in the film industry reached a historic high in 2020, but men outnumber women 4-1 in key roles. Actually, when it comes to key jobs like director, cinematographer, or producer, men continue to dominate. So it's odd to talk about reaching historic highs when women remain so far from parity. In fact, inequality reaches into every facet and corner of the business. And when we think about what a director or producer looks like, when we see these pictures inside our heads, typically they are of a white male. We can't discount the impact these subconscious images have on hiring decisions. So let's start to introduce 3 of them, 3 all of you, Sandrine Brouwer, Shreyashi Sen, and Gunit Monga. Sandrine Brouwer, you are an independent film producer. You are producing Scammer, written by Stefan Funkinos and directed by Cyril Amitai, who is directing the film and plans to shoot it in India, I hope, this November. You will confirm. Your latest production include Manto, and the director was Nandita Das, and the film premiered in 2018 Festival de Cannes, Un certain regard official selection. Fig 3, directed by Alamor Davidian, Israeli-Ethiopian director, was also premiered in 2018 at Toronto Film Festival. Gate and Tuso Larzak. I don't want to give you all the list of you. No, but we will talk about it. And last, one more point. You were part of the 40 founders of the collective 50/50, and we will talk about it later. Shreyashi Sen on my right side. Shreyashi Sen, you are founder and managing director of Dapan Global. You are a film distributor and producer involved with an Indo-French co-production, Slow Joe, which will be filmed in France too. You are also the only woman movie distributor in South and Southeast Asia, having distributed and screening more than 95 movies across genres and languages. Then our third renowned guest, Gunit Monga. Gunit Monga is an Indian film producer. She's one of the most renowned filmmakers, not just in India, but also across the globe, symbolizing the victory of content with your project. Everybody knows, even in France, The Lunchbox, Masan, Gangs of Wasseypur, and I love all of them. You recently founded a cinema collective called IWR, Indian Woman Rising. I'm at discovering, amplifying, and distributing the work of Indian women filmmakers across the globe. And yesterday night, you received the French award of Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres for your contribution in the field of cinema. So, all three of you have in common to work in co-production, in which fosters international cultural cooperation. You're not afraid to cross borders, and Sandrine Brouwer came from France 2 days ago. In this pandemic context, can you imagine? This is a very bold decision, and thank you so much for joining us today in this particular context. It's a really good, how to say, a big message, I would like to say. Thank you so much, Sandrine. And so you are not afraid to cross borders and break barriers in the field of cinema. I would like to, my first question for all of you, what specific challenges, barrier, or observation prompted you to act for gender equality? And maybe because I was just mentioning Sandrine, maybe can you first answer to this question, the specific challenges for gender equality in this field of cinema?
Well, hello everybody. Thank you very much for your kind words. Just one thing, the context is very difficult. I think that the suffering is even worse for the poor and for the most weak margin of the society. And I feel that in the film industry, we were pretty privileged, and I must say in France also, because we had some incentives to help us keep busy and waiting for the crisis to end. So the crisis was also a time where I could not produce. There were television films kept going on. There were a lot of measures to be taken, so it was very expensive. Television films were going on. I only had films for cinema, so I had to stop. So what I did is I focused on whatever is it that we do with 50-50. And now, to answer your question, I'm sorry, there is no one specific issue. The whole thing started, I think, without notice, without knowing it. I never thought, when I started working in the film industry, I never thought, oh, I'm a woman, it's going to be difficult. I think I was doing what all of us does, all of you do, is I was trying to focus on what is it that I want to do. And it was more about what we say in French, une crise existentielle. It was more about, trying to do whatever it is I want to do without understanding if there was, without even thinking there would be a difference whether I'm a man or a woman. And I turned 50 a year ago. And so right before I was 50, 2 years ago, there was this Weinstein case in the US. It came, of course, it went all over the world. And I must say that throughout dinner parties, chats with friends, chats with colleagues, we all started questioning ourselves, do we know any case of that sort on our playground? And in fact, I think we all know of some harassment, we all know of some cases. Nothing burst as publicly and as strongly as the Weinstein case. But it was a meeting point. It was a call for us to try and think of what is it that we can do on our playground. And this was the important momentum. The momentum is it was happening out there in the US, and there is nothing I can do about what is happening in the US, but there's certainly something I can do about the playground that I work in on a daily basis. So that was the call.
What about you, Gurneet Monga?
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the honor last night, everyone, and appreciating my work and journey so far. And thank you, Sandrine, for coming all the way. I wanted to say that we formed Indian Women Rising because we came across stats, which is that less than 5% women are directors in India, and that kind of triggered something, a conversation between Tahira Kashyap, Khurana, and me, and we wanted to do something. And we've been talking about it for some time, and we both went to Ekta Kapoor, and we shared this thought with her, and she in a heartbeat said, I want to be able to support it. Let's structure it and do it in a structured fashion, which is constant, which is growing. And we built a mandate for ourselves, which was we will, because we are all independent filmmakers, we have our companies, we are doing our own. I work as a producer with Sikya Entertainment. Ekta has her own studio. But we decided we will come together and we will discover, we will amplify, and we will distribute more films of Indian filmmakers. So this was our start point. The first film that we backed was a short film called Bittu. And it went up to the shortlist at the Oscars this year. And we are now closing distribution on it. And we plan to do more, but we formed our collective a couple of months ago. But it's something that is brewing for a very long time, and to be able to find a structure where we can continue doubling down on women creators, because, as a producer, distributor, I think the amplification that is needed for any piece of content is the most important, to put it on the place of market, of merit, and have so many people talk about it that so many more people go sample it. So that is where we come in. So we are currently at a place where we want to get into distribution. We are looking at even making some content, but we will get there in our next months to come.
Thank you so much. And what is your answer?
Well, thank you for having me. It is an honor. I come from a family of filmmakers, and I was told, ever since I remember, never to get into this industry. So I went on to study social work and work in areas of domestic violence. It was only by chance and by maybe it runs in my blood that I happened to start a film festival, which got me into distribution. And very interestingly, theatrical distribution is a very, very male world. There are very, very few women in actual distribution and not theatrical distribution at all. When I started looking at independent films first, my company in Singapore, so yes, crossing borders, I've lived in Singapore for 20 years, come back to my roots, been here because of COVID for 1 year, and I think I'm going to stay here for much longer. Is I was told by some of the biggest theaters when I wanted to get into some bigger films, why do you want to get into these films? There are already so many big names and all male who are doing it. There's no point, just do your little independent films and that's fine. There are boys' clubs that don't let you get into distribution at all. There are dirty games that are played. And when we're talking so much about Me Too, at times I smirk thinking of the kind of messages and lunches where I've been offered films if only I can sleep for one night with the producer. So it's that which pushes you to say, you know what, I'm going to prove you wrong. Having said that, I've made wonderful male friends who also respect you for the woman you are. It's not all bad out there. But it pushes you more to say women's voices need to be heard. As a woman, you need to tell women's stories, and you need to come together as women to make this industry the way it seems it's not. Um, so that kind of pushed me to sign the MOU at Cannes, at least in Southeast Asia, to say we're going to at least look at production agreements where sexual harassment at least is included as a definite term in the agreement, that if someone is found to breach it, you can be thrown out. Contrary to belief, Southeast Asia also has a huge amount of sexual harassment in the industry. There's huge amount of gender inequality, which you can't speak out about, especially countries like Philippines and Thailand. So what I also would wish to do is, since I do have a home in Singapore and a home in and a heart in India, is look at how cross-border collaborations of such sort can bring out more women's voices and production sort. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You all belong to collective and Federation of Women, IWR, etc., or DARPAN Global, if I can say. How did you build this network? When did it start, and how did you build it? Please.
We started recently, but I have to say that I'm heavily inspired by the journey that Ava DuVernay has had, the journey of 50/50, learning more about women starting collectives globally impacted our coming together too. So we started very recently, I would say in Jan this year, to change with a mission of changing the status quo and increasing the percentage of women filmmakers, everything that we can do to amplify, to promote, to open more doors, to be able to, double down on each other as producers, as financiers, as and people who have opportunities of entering doors of distributors, studios. So we started recently being very informed by collectives, which have been, I actually said that last night in my speech, that what in 2018, the picture of 82 plus women on red carpet and the announcement of 50/50 had a huge impact on me. I remember that picture really well. Nandita Das was part of it. So many of my French friends were part of it, and Sandrine, and so many of them coming together. And when Juliet connected me to 50/50 recently, and hearing their journey and how strategically they have built it, it was very, very inspiring. So we, in our country, are starting in a very unique way. We are privately coming together. We are coming together to distribute. We are coming together to open our connections to younger women filmmakers, or not even like younger in the business, and to make sure that they're celebrated in the mainstream. So that is where I feel our purpose is. Distribution is so nuanced and is so, I think good films get lost because of lack of distribution. So, and lack of marketing, and that's where we come in with money, with power, with insights, with connections. And we plan to double down, and we plan to distribute a few films, and we plan to make some with the ambition of having more filmmakers, more women filmmakers in the business. And less than 5% is just a really, really bad statistics. And I hope we are able to change that in the years to come.
Yes, please, Sandrine.
So maybe now you will be inspiring us, because this is we had a different approach, because first of all, like I said before, there was this momentum that was created, and we started out with 10 of us and 40 of us, and the question was, what can we do on our playground? Also realizing that Time's Up US was on, and the real question was, what can we do where we are immediately, in the way we work, in the way, and what are the accurate problems? And that is, so what we did is we started launching surveys. We wanted figures. These figures were the key for our action, because they were pointing a finger at what had to be done In other words, we were not pointing our finger to specific guilty person. It's not you men who are taking our space. It's all of us as a system who agree day after day to repeat ourselves and repeat this world whereas in school, more than 50% of the students are girls. Every year in the film production figures, we see again and again that only 23% of the films are being directed by women. And to be honest, and Agnès Jaoui, who would have loved to be here with us, she was invited, but she could not make it this time. Also because of the sanitary crisis, it was very difficult for her to do it. But Agnès Jaoui was lucky and skilled enough to have beautiful films around the world. And for many years, she was promoting, in a way, she was saying how proud she was to be part of the French industry, where the ratio was so high. We have 24% of the films produced every year that are being directed by women. Until she came to realize that she was only being happy because it meant that 76% of the films were directed by men, whereas more than 50% of the students are girls. So what is happening around here? Where are they going? Where are these girls? Where do they disappear? Is it just random that they disappear? So what she experienced on her own, that was exactly sharp. She joined us this year. But when we created 50/50 in 2018, that was exactly what we wanted to look at. We wanted to look at figures. We wanted to understand when and where precisely we have to think of measures together, not women against men, not one against the other, but together to change the system. And this first action we took, that Gunit just mentioned, was very important for us because it was all about thinking together, also with Thierry Frémaux, the head of the Festival de Cannes. How is it that since the Festival de Cannes was created, only 82 women were invited for the work, when in the same amount of time it was 1,562 men who were invited for the work? Where does it come from? And do we agree? What can we do here and now to make a change? So that was our first action. And to get back to your question, we act because we do have other professions. This year of the crisis, of the COVID crisis, made it possible for me to have plenty of time to work specifically on this. But the rest of the time, we are directors, producers, screenwriters, and we are busy with other things. So what we do is we focus on one specific item, question, survey, and we work on it until we find out what can be done. So unfortunately, we know our name originally was 50/50 by 2020. When we started in 2018, we were hoping that we would self-destroy in 2020. Unfortunately, we realized that every time we pick up a story or a subject, there's another one right behind it. So we keep working.
Yes.
What I always think, and that's something that has kind of gnawed at my senses, is we should reach a stage where the gender of the producer or the distributor should be irrelevant. I'm a producer, I'm a distributor. I'm not a woman producer or a woman distributor. And that's when I think we start making a difference. But having said that, we have a long way to go. And I say that because I've been in a gender agnostic society in Singapore for 20 years. And I've come into my roots where recently I was on the sets of a show I was creative producing. And I did notice the sexism angle so strong, very, very strong. And that's where I feel efforts like 50/50, efforts like Gunit is part of, where Gunit says, powerful women names do have to be there. Because that's when this very strong angle of being a woman on a set, no matter how much, I was the creative producer on the set, I wasn't bereft of rumors and gossip and really, really strong patriarchal norms that were set. So beyond borders, big names, powerful names need to come together, men and women. And one of the reasons, so we signed the MOU in Cannes with the Philippines Film Development Commission and Singapore 2 years back. We still have a long way to go to see production agreements incorporate the things that we've talked about. So I think beyond borders, things need to work. We need to recognize cultures and how in each culture, productions work in a different way with women. Hierarchies work. How are women seen in their roles? Women directors, producers are seen in one way. Women behind the scenes who are technicians are seen in another way. How junior women are seen on sets. And what are the kind of posh agreements that we have in place to protect these women. And it's not just about sexual harassment, it's about everyday words that are used on set about women and men. And I think it's very, very needed for women of power to come together to make these changes.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is very interesting. And just to mention the title of the conversation, Women in Cinema Stronger Together. But as you all mentioned, it's not only women, and it's not men against or women against men or men against women. It's thinking together, working together. So I really appreciate that you noted this important way of thinking, the collaboration, the cooperation.
Yeah, or maybe I can also elaborate on our agenda. What we decided to very soon is try not to work on the consequences. We do not want to, help girls because poor girls, they're being thrown out of the system. We aim at changing the system. And as Christine just pointed out, it is true that the system means all of us. It's not men against women or men or women against men. And it's not about men domination. Men domination is part of history, it's part of the process. But what we're fighting is to gather, and we're not looking for one more detail, is we're not looking for role models. Role models are great. Nandita, for instance, I think takes it very seriously. Gunit is doing that very seriously. I think we need role models. They are very important. But they're not good enough. They're almost not good at all. Because what happens when you have a role model is that you accept the system to be the way it is. And have a role model means, oh, if she made it, everybody can make it. In other words, if you don't make it, it's because of you. And this is not what we're looking at. We're looking together, men and women, the ones who made it and the ones who didn't make it yet, to be together and think of the system and think of how we can improve the way we work together. And that is why we need service, because it helps us identify exactly where we can point our finger out. I can say one thing about the work that we did. For instance, this COVID year, it allowed us to work. We published a book. It's not a publication. It's not a public book. Comment on dit un livre blanc? We elaborated a piece of work that works on preventing and fighting against sexual harassment and violences in the film industry. Why do we have to do that? I mean, law tells you that you should not harass. Law tells you that you should not aggress. That in the film industry, lines are not so clear. Actresses, of course, they're here and they're available. This is part of the system. This is how it works. Now, as a producer, and I'm sure we all three can say the same thing, when we love a film, when we love a director, and when we love our actors, it doesn't mean we're going to sexually harass them. We love them and desire them for the work. And this is what we want to put in front of all of us. We want to put their work in front of all of us. So let's be serious for a minute and stop thinking that in our field, sexual harassment is part of the game. Now, like I just said, I realized by saying so that most men in our industry, and I'm talking about my playground in France, do not want to harass everybody. But they still play with the lines. They're not sure where the lines are. As women, we don't know. Everybody says, oh, it's not so clear. Maybe she was okay. There's something about a gray zone that we tend to take for granted. So what we did is we worked together with all the producers union, all the directors union, the scriptwriters union, the casting directors union, the actors unions, and actors and directors and producers. And we drew together what we call tools to take action and to be no longer that gray zone. And when things happen or when behaviors are questionable and you're not sure where you're standing, to have a kind of a clear map of what can be done, how can you behave, who can you talk to, and you don't have to, file a complaint immediately and go to court. You have to go to court if a case is strong enough. But until the case is strong enough, this is where the gray zone is, and this is where we need to effacer le brouillard, to clear the haze, the fog. Just, get rid of the fog and be sharp about what is happening. And this is a process, so everybody needs to be helped. Whoever thinks he or she is a victim, whoever thinks he might have been or she might have been a witness or not, whoever is responsible. As a producer, you are always responsible because legally you are, everybody depends on you. So everybody has a kind of responsibility of putting a word out there, and who do you address, what do you say, what do you question, how do you do that, before entering any legal action, just to understand what you're talking about. So this is a work we've been doing together, and right now as I'm talking, the National Center for Cinema, the CNC, has launched a compulsory session for producers and distributors and sales agent, any company holder, to attend, to have a better understanding of what we're talking about, so they can, in their own company, implement all these measures. And this is the Sensei that did that. And we are looking at these sessions to be open to everybody, because just like we're facing a huge crisis, which is the COVID crisis, and in a way, this gray zone in terms of sexual harassment tends to be just like the virus. If the more and more of us could get vaccinated, then there would be less acceptance and less passiveness in front of sexual harassment. So I believe that the knowledge of understanding better these lines not to be crossed would be a key asset. So what we want, right now we're trying to promote to have these sessions organized and open for everyone in the industry. This is one of the actions that we're looking at right now.
Well, I've always believed the personal is political. And I relate my own experiences to how I will relate to my work environment. We need to tell women's stories more. We need to look for women who tell stories, who can make stories, give more shared experiences across borders. One thing I've realized having distributed films across borders is, be it Latin America, be it India, be it Southeast Asia, women's stories across borders are very, very similar. And we need to tell them. We need to push men and women both to tell these stories. As far as policies and groups and collectives, yes, we're all working towards that. They take time because sometimes you have to also work through governments. It's a process. I, for myself, have decided that if a production team doesn't agree to having a POSH committee, I'm not going to be part of that production. I've noticed that in a very recent production, they didn't want to have a POSH committee because they felt if there were incidences, the production would stop. And if that stopped, monies would stop flowing, and because of the COVID situation, that would impact resources and payments. But that's not the way to go. You're not protecting your women and men. So we need to start putting our foot down on things like that, that you need to start protecting the people that are on the ground making the content. And I think having come from, like I said, with a very gender agnostic background for 20 years into a very gender stereotypical production unit, we need to have very cultural conversations across borders. And for me, it's been a learning, a relearning, readjusting. So what may work in Europe may not work in Singapore, may not work in India. So having conversations such so that we can adjust and readjust and not take it as a blanket statement of sexual harassment norms across production agreements. Have a lot more collaborations across borders. That's going to help having these conversations. For myself, I'm looking for more stories about women, common women, documentaries. I think that's a very, very strong area. Documentaries help bring around policy changes. We've seen that in history. I'm looking to tell stories of real women in the ground. There's a very interesting one that I've been looking at in Maharashtra, a story about women in the village who have, there's a group of women in a village in Maharashtra where their uteruses are taken away so that they can work in the fields and not have babies. And that's impingement of women's rights. And so it's not just about the industry, it's about the women you're telling stories about, what's happening on gender equality there, and these stories that need to be told. So I'm looking for stories made by women, about shared experiences. That's also a lot of awareness out there. Diversity, cultural awareness.
You mentioned the long process, and you all mentioned that we need to have more conversation across borders, and you are based between Singapore and India and Southeast Asia. And today we also have a specific Indian-French dialogue, which is also very important because it's also a way to be stronger together. Sir, have you noticed improvement and change in this way of the long process for more gender equality in your field?
Well, I don't have good news, I'm afraid. It seems that as it becomes a word, a spread word, a word out of mouth, it's not a word of action. I mean, I hear a lot about pledges, commitments, signatures, agreements, policies. Now, when we look at surveys, the news is not so good. My point is, there's a lot of, I think, let's put it that way. Part of it is a good news because more and more people talk about it and probably the awareness is growing. And that's great because awareness is the first stepping stone. Now, awareness is nothing unless it's followed by action. And there is another association in France called Le Lab Femmes de Cinéma, and they actually do surveys on a European scale. We do our surveys are more French on the French scale, and Le Lab Femmes de Cinéma is doing surveys on the European scale. And it has proven that the ratio of women director, again, it's only one figure, and of course there are many more figures, but this is a key one because it's the most obvious. And what is important in our agenda, what I was telling earlier, our agenda is always to analyze a situation through the prism of power. Who decides? Who is the decision maker? And that is how we addressed festivals. We wanted to understand how they work. We want to understand how the power is being elaborated and how decisions are being taken. So therefore, a key point to survey is the director point of view, because the director is the one who brings, of course, the story and brings a point of view in the film. So the European surveys that the Lab Femmes de Cinéma has released shows that since 2017 was like a peak in the amount of in the ratio of women director, and since 2018 it starts to slow down, and 2019 are fewer women than 2018, and so on and so forth. So the news is not so good on that level. So what I can try and point out is say, okay, so if the figures are not so good, it's maybe also because, there's a time lapse. So let's think that because the awareness is here, because everybody has the word in mouth, let's just all of us make sure that it also turns into action. I was very happy, for instance, that the French embassy decided to have this agreement signed yesterday, because this becomes a tool. The agreement is nothing if it's only an agreement. The minute the French embassy took the initiative of calling for that agreement, it means they intend to have a policy and to promote more women artists, to promote more women female directors, not just as female against men again, but to have some kind of parity and raise more attention on women directors and writers and just name it. So I think it just shows that there's a lot more work to be done, and there is no way we can rest. It's only a beginning.
I mean, I think, we are negotiating our feminism every day. It's not something that it's not something that we've arrived and, it's a conversation in India, I feel have recently started over the last year. Even for me to realize the impact of Me Too movement in India, as a individual producer, not even as a collective, was like, what can I do at an individual level to continue telling stories by women and by and have that lens when I sit on any project. So that lens is very recent. It is not something that it's literally the first year, the first few months of this conversation shaping up, pushing back. So your work in France and the data, even though this is, I mean, the challenges that everyone has faced around the world informs us to be more aware. We are very differently structured because we are fully equity funded. So the decisions are at private level and not at a government body level. So at the core, we are very differently structured. So all individual choices can be subjective, but a lot our choices can be uplifted and changed. And that conversation is just beginning to happen. So our numbers are very low. It's very, very disappointing, but we are aware and we are waking up every morning inspired to be able to push for it, change for it, and reflect back on, how much we can do and what we can co-create, co-conspire, and build that sisterhood. So I think with my personal work has definitely changed in the last couple of years. But our work as a collective is just begun, like I've said before. But even the work countrywide, with studios, with producers, there's definitely a conversation that has started.
For me, I always believe for something good to happen, the worst has to happen first. So Me Too had to happen so that awareness had to come across. I don't go to lunches worried that I'm going to be asked to sleep. Is the man still thinking about sleeping with me? Yes, he is. He won't dare to say it anymore. Yeah. So people are getting more aware about gender sensitivities, which is a good thing. Are people getting away with it? Yes, they're still getting away with it. But it's also interesting that there are awards and festivals that are making way for gender diversity. There are conversations happening on inclusion, color, and gender, which need to happen, however tongue-in-cheek and ironical at times it is. And sometimes you need to have it in the face to make people aware that this exists. So I think there's a change happening. I'm seeing the change. Does it still exist? Yes, it does. But people have become definitely more sensitive to the fact that you need to have diversity. You need to make place for women. You need to make place for less discriminatory ways of working. So various things that were very bad had to happen for the good and for people to start thinking in a different way. But yes, we do have a very, very long way to go.
Thank you so much. And on behalf of the Embassy of France in India, I would like to very warmly thank you for this very interesting conversation. Thank you so much, and I would like to add, stay safe and stay stronger together, women and men. Thank you so much.